generally good. Otherwise, I might have left like so many other employees because I had opportunities to leave the company to work for other companies. But I stayed with RCA. RCA was not a bad company to work for. Although we had gripes and complaints, and I filed grievances as an employee representative, but a lot of other companies in the same business did not come up to the RCA standards. After all, we were leaders in electronics for many years.
What was one of your most memorable experiences working at RCA?
I guess it was applying for upgradings. We did not have a total fair employment practice among some of the departments in those days. It improved in later years, but when I went there, it was way down. And RCA was still a good company to work for in comparison to other companies. As I recall, only one African-American engineer working for the company as a process engineer up to about 1950, after I returned from service. I think 1950, I recall a number of African-American engineers, graduate engineers that worked in engineering. But those occasions dealing with employment upgradings were very memorable because I had to fight for every upgrading that I had. I think, well, coming out of the Army, it was a company policy to upgrade returning service personnel, but I returned on the lower grade for a Class A tester, and when my employer representative or shop steward found out that I was not making top pay for the assignments that I was given, he interceded in talking with management, and I was upgraded to the top pay grade. In other words, I didn't serve out the total period that normally is served for upgradings. I came in, say, in December of 1950, and by the end of January, I was earning top grade for a Class A tester. Then a few years later, I upgraded to a Class X tester, a production test setup man. And 4 years later, I upgraded to tech writer and editor. And that position, I served both company and organized labor, bouncing backwards and forth. During that time, I also earned a teacher's certificate for teaching labor union journalism from Brunswick University in New Brunswick. And again, that was affiliated with my role as an employer representative, because the union underwrote my expenses for going to Rutgers. And at Rutgers, I served a term as president of the New Jersey Press Council, the New Jersey Labor Press Council at Rutgers. And I stayed on the executive board there until I declined to run for re-election in Camden. But you asked me for memorable occasions. I guess the most memorable occasions were those experiences that I recall trying to get upgrades. They were not easily obtained, and I didn't get them the first time that I tried for them. And I want to keep the name of RCA positive. So I don't want to labor on those negative experiences that I had with management. Because management overall was good, because I don't think most employees that work for RCA of any race had a record of getting as many upgrades as I got in 37 years there, and going probably into the different areas of employment, including that of the company and that as a labor leader.
Can you describe an average workday?
An average workday. Specifically, what now you're referring to?
Just a day when you're going to work, what did you do in that day?
Keeping busy and never never yielding to fatigue. I think the most significant thing I should mention here is that I was never given an assignment that I couldn't do. I was never given an assignment that I didn't produce competitively with every other person in that occupation working with me. And I was never satisfied staying on one job or one particular equipment. I stayed on it, but I was constantly trying to familiarize myself with every aspect of the department. I never made myself stay on one equipment day after day after day, year after year. I didn't care how many equipments I worked on during the course of the day. And that accounts for the many upgradings, I guess. Actually, I was the ground maintenance engineer in the War Department during World War II. And I was assigned to the Philadelphia, I was assigned to Signal Corps. I went through Signal Corps schools, United States Army Signal Corps schools, and when the war ended, I had become a ground maintenance engineering aide. So I had qualified to go into the lab, the RCA's lab, when I entered there as a production line assembly tester. But the culture and the community during 46 wasn't one that I could go into as an African American. So to get into the company, I accepted what was open, and I got an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of television. But before going into RCA, I had worked for the Worldwide Electronics Company in New York between laid off from RCA and going to lay off from the U.S. government service or War Department and going into RCA. I went to New York because I wasn't successful in finding employment in Philadelphia, and that's another aspect of my experience with you interested in RCA. But I'm just throwing this in. I went to New York and I got a job at Worldwide Electronics, and I was assistant chief engineer there. And I was responsible for field service. I traveled from Massachusetts to Cape May, as far west as Alabama, as a service representative for the company. So I had far qualified, met the minimum qualification going into RCA as a laboratory technician, not an engineer because I didn't have a degree, but as a lab tech, I surely qualified for. However, I went in in the assembly plant, and I stayed in the assembly plant from 46 to '58 before I upgraded into engineering. But, and I'm saying all this in relation to the question you asked. I have a habit of running on this way. Please feel free to stop me. Goes back to my first day in elementary school. One day I learned that I could talk, and people would give me an ear and listen to what I had to say, so I opened my mouth and I have to close it since. I appreciate your time.
What kind of changes were made over the years you were at RCA?
Now, when you say changes, what are you referring to?
Were anything different from when you first started until you retired?
You mean with an RCA relationship to
Yeah.
me or to my personal life?
Whichever you feel free to answer.
How much time do we have, you say? How many minutes do we have? Or have we run out of time?
I think we have about 5 or 10 minutes left.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
All right, I'll hit my personal life. Most of my time in RCA that I was in school. I had dropped out of high school, third year high, down in Virginia. And when I tried to get my high school diploma here in Philadelphia, I was told that they could not accept me as a junior or as 3 years of high school. They could only accept me as a junior high level. So I had to put the equivalency of 4 full years in Standard Evening High and Temple University's high school division to get my high school diploma. And I was blessed to work for a company like RCA where I could work day shift and go to night school during the regular school session, and during the summer months when there was no public school for Philadelphia, I went to Temple University's high school division, and I bounced, and I was fortunate in able to go on the night shift to attend Temple University's day school, high school division. So I bounced from Standard Evening High, Philadelphia to Temple University's high to get my diploma.